Welcome back, all my 40k fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today we're going to be talking about a couple other Necron dynasties. After LVO, the Hypercrypt looks like the hot seller. Being able to teleport, bring a monolith within 3 inches, and bring your army right into an opponent's backfield is definitely solid for competitive play. As well as the Cryptek Court, the Canoptic Court, have both done very well. But there's a lot more in this codex to unpack and take care of. We've played the Awakened Dynasty for most of the beginning parts of the edition, as that was the detachment inside of the index. With some modifications to it, though, the Awakened Dynasty is still there. So there's 2 other detachments that we never hear any talk about. Some more so for one than the other. And today, this week, I'm going to be taking a look at both those detachments, and we're going to see what we can put together and start getting some lists on the table. Now, this next coming weeks, though, I do want to mess around with some silly Grey Knights things, just to put some more models on the table that I haven't put on the channel yet that I have. And all in all, just get some good content, some good 40k, as well as allow other people to bring some armies that we may not traditionally see, just so we can get a whole different flavor and mixture before I jump into multiple different Necron factions and armies on the table. So for this video today, we're going to talk about the Phalanx, and I'm going to call it the Phalanx because I'm going to butcher the, I don't actually know how this is pronounced, the Obeisance Phalanx. So someone can let me know in the comment section, and then I'll get that right. But for the context of this video, we're going to talk about the Phalanx, what it can do in a first glance. Now, I've looked over the Phalanx a couple of times and see what different things it can do and some interesting stuff. And it hasn't pulled me in. It hasn't drew me in as much as the Hypercrypt or Canoptic Court did. And as we can see by results at LVO, as well as many other tournaments, my own personal with the Canoptic Court, those ones seem like the winners and the strongest. With that being said, we don't want to completely ignore detachments like this that may have power that we're not seeing. And at that same time, too, power in pieces. So, you know, I ran into someone this last weekend who was bringing up this Phalanx and saying, oh, you really need to run Annihilation Barge. Annihilation Barge is amazing with it. And that's and so it's something that, you know, I wasn't really looking at Annihilation Barge with this detachment. There might be a couple other things I'm not looking at. And then hopefully by the end of the conversation and after reading through some of the comments, we might be able to put together some pretty powerful armies. Later this week, I'm going to look at the Annihilation Legion, which is one that I'm looking forward to messing around with a bit since I'm working on a World Eater's army. But for this time, we're here to talk about the Phalanx. So guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell for notifications, get notified on all the content that we bring you here on the channel. Like I said, some Grey Knights battle reports, the Destroyer Call, talking about them, as well as eventually, when we get something nice put together, the Phalanx. So what is the Phalanx? What do we get from this detachment? So first of all, our detachment rule is Worthy Foe. In our command phase, select one enemy unit. Until the start of your next command phase, each Overlord, Lich Guard, or Triarch unit from your army that makes an attack on the target adds 1 to the wound roll. So it's kind of a weird Oath of Moment. You know, we're not getting reroll to hit, but we're picking a target and getting +1 to wound. And the reason why I say it's kind of like Oath of Moment in a sense is that we're picking a target that we're potentially going to eliminate. And those specific types of unit, Overlord, Lich Guard, and Triarch units will get +1 to wound. So Lich Guard and Triarch are what they are. The Triarch are Triarch Praetorian, Triarch Stalker, not the Silent King, surprisingly, not the Silent King. I think he does at least have Overlord in it. But one of the other videos I was looking at, I was actually surprised to see that he is not a Triarch by definition. And actually, he is vehicle character, epic hero of the Silent King. So not the Silent King actually doesn't get any of these buffs, this buff. Only Overlord, Lich Guard, and Triarch. Now, the Overlord, being a character unit, if he joins Necron Warriors or Immortals, they would then be considered an Overlord unit. So you would get +1 to wound with units such as Immortals and Lich Guard, which can be really good, especially into things like the Tesla to be able to get additional, to be able to hit harder. That we do get rerolls on the Lich Guard. If we're shooting at a unit on an objective marker, we get rerolls to wound or get reroll ones to wound. This with Lich Guard, Immortals can really help boost how much damage we're actually putting through. Super helpful with Warriors. Warriors coming in at the Strength 4. There's a lot of stuff that's tougher than that, and they're really just kind of hitting a wall when they shoot. So being able to do that, it gives a good boost to those units. Now, units like the Lich Guard probably don't need +1 to wound as much, but it's still nice to have. I mean, when you come in with a Strength 6 weapon and you're looking at something T5, going from 3s to 2s to wound with a lower volume of attacks and everything like that, it really could be the final point of a unit of Lich Guard being able to take out the target that, maybe on an objective marker that you need to remove. So Worthy Foes is one of the, I would say probably one of the weaker of the detachment special rules, Canoptic Court and Hypercrypt being amazing. Awakened Dynasty, I mean, the boost to hits is really strong. And even the Annihilation Legion kind of gives a little more in those aspects than this does. But just because it is a very simple detachment ability, doesn't mean it's not strong. That simplicity behind it makes it very, very easy to not lose focus on it, and as well not feel like you have to base everything around this detachment ability and can focus onto other things. So it may be a soft ability. It's a good ability. +1 to wound is good. Don't take me the wrong way on that, but it's a softer ability. So let's move over into some of the enhancements, what we're getting from enhancements around this. And we're going to keep that lingering thought over here of one unit on the table each command phase we're selecting, and that unit is we're going to get +1 to wound against it. Enemy units. Overlord. So Honorable Combatant. Overlord model only. Each time the bearer in the unit destroys an enemy character unit, your opponent loses 1 CP if they have any. So I will tell you right now, I don't know if this is going to be any good. I don't know if it's going to be as strong. I don't know where it's going to fall in that hierarchy. I will run this in every single detachment that I take. That is one of the funniest, coolest, it's probably one of my favorite enhancements in the game right now. And it's not because of some of the other ones that are more powerful. It's like, oh, but what about this one? This one takes command points away from your opponent, whether they want to or not. And to a point that you're like, I'm going to attack that unit. And you don't have to eliminate the unit in hand-to-hand. You just have to eliminate the unit. And so you put the Overlord with any unit, Lich Guard, Immortals, whatever. And when they attack and destroy a unit that has a character model in it, because you have to eliminate the character unit, so you have to actually take out the model, your opponent loses a command point. So at that point, your opponent's going to look at you and go, well, okay, I'm about to lose this command point. So before you even attack and you go, oh yeah, I got precision, I got this, I got that. And you're looking at all these things going, I can take him out. And your opponent just looks and goes, so you eliminate him, I lose a command point. If you don't eliminate him, then I keep that command point and can spend on something else. So I might as well just spend the command point. Now, 90% of the time, I feel like you're not going to knock away the command point, but you're going to force your opponent to use it because they know they're going to lose it. So I love it. I think it's great. I think it's hilarious, and I will definitely be using that all the time. It may not be the best, but I find it hilarious, and my first list has got to at least have that in there. Unflinching Will. Overlord model only. The bearer, so Overlord specifically, the bearer's models have weapons have precision and anti-infantry 5-up ability. I'm a little sad to see the anti-infantry 5-up. Overlords don't have the best combat profile. They have a decent combat profile, like pound for pound, stat for stat when you go down it. Like you look at some things like the comparable things that they might fight against, like some of the Space Marine characters, where Space Marine characters might be able to hit a little bit harder than an Overlord does. Overlords tend to have like the reanimation protocols and stuff like that. So, and then like minuses if you take just a standard Overlord, like minuses to reduce damage and stuff. So that's a fight that could go on for a minute between an Overlord and a Space Marine like Captain, Lieutenant, or something like that. That's a fight that can go on and happen. Seeing the precision anti-infantry 5-up, the strength on most of the Overlord's weapons as it is a little bit higher. So when you're going into most infantry, you're probably going to wound it on better than a 5. So I feel like the anti-infantry 5-up for its weapons is kind of weak. And then on the opposite side, as far as shooting is concerned, there's not a lot of shooting. Now there is one. There is one very interesting weapon that I kind of want to spam in this, and I want to see how it does for having multiple of them. But even then, you're using that for anti-vehicle, not anti-infantry. So there's not, because it gives it to all the weapons. I don't see a weapon that you'd want to do this on. Now you could theoretically put this on a Catacomb Command Barge, and I've looked and thought about that and thinking about that. The Catacomb Command Barge could then turn into almost a sniper role. It's really tough, 4-up invuln, kind of tough to kill, and then you're getting all of the weapons have this ability. So now when we take Tesla or Gauze in that sense, any tougher infantry, you can still get that precision hit at a higher toughness. So there might be some set on there, but even so, like the Gauze is strength 6. I mean, it's like, it just, anti-infantry 4 would seem more like an ability. Anti-infantry 5, not so much. Not in my feeling initially. Catacomb Command Barge, cool place for it, but really that's about it. The rest of the Overlords that are standing in combat and stuff like that really don't have the gun to amplify this. And their close combat weapons usually going to be a higher strength as it is. So the precision is cool, though. The precision is really cool, and that I like that a lot going on to a CCB, since the CCB has the different gun options. And as I say this, I want to make sure that the CCB is, in fact, an Overlord. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. Well, look at that. It is not. Vehicle, character, fly, Catacomb Command Barge. So it is not even an Overlord, so we can't even we can't take it on him. So, which is disappointing. That's very disappointing, because like that would be, I remember back when there was a time where you could make a Catacomb Command Barge that was a sniper. So I really thought that was going to be where it goes, but it's vehicle, character, fly, Catacomb Command Barge. So that you can't do it with the CCB. So disregard everything I said before. But yeah, like Overlord melee weapon, you got the Staff of Light, strength 5. I mean, that can be decent, but otherwise, combat weapons, again, if you're taking the staff, see, I don't really like the Staff of Light on the Overlord, where you can just take a blade instead that has a higher strength. So that one's kind of a miss. If it could go on the Catacomb, I'd like it a lot more. And I was actually considering that for a Catacomb to be able to kind of maybe mess with some characters. But since it's Overlord only and it can't go on a Catacomb, unfortunately, I think it's kind of a miss. Next one, Warrior Noble. Overlord. Model only. Each time a melee attack targets the bearer's unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. This is a really good one. Any units that you wish to do this into. Now, the Chronomancer also gives you a -1 to hit. So a Chronomancer in Lichguard or Mortals or Warriors is going to give you a -1 to hit. So this wouldn't be one you can't really stack -1s to hit, minus to hits, and just you can't really stack them. You don't get -2. But if you are going into a lot of +1 to hit, now if you do stack this on top of the Chronomancer, you would get the -1 to hit, because you would be -2, your opponent would be -1, you do the math, finish with -1, and that's in your benefit. So you could stack in that. I don't feel like that's needed right now in the game state. Maybe in the future it's something to keep in the back of our minds that we can do. in case things like when Tau hit or other shooting armies, they might be able to get significant. They might have terrible ballistic skills and be able to get significantly better off +1 to hit and stuff like that. So we might be something to consider with it later on. But right now, in this current state, not a big thing. Now, off that though, there are other things that cannot. Lich-Guard cannot get any minuses to that. Lich-Guard have the ability to be -1 to wound on any weapons that are tougher than them. So -1 to hit, -1 to wound, that's going to be a really tough unit to move. On top of the fact of the invulnerable save, that makes these guys actually pretty difficult to move. On top of that, we also have the convergence of Dominion now. Being able to take a single convergence of Dominion, putting it behind a wall, completely out of line of sight, and keeping your Lich Guard near it. Now you have a 6-up feel no pain on those Lich Guard as they start to lurch across the field. So this one is this is a solid one. This is a very, very solid one to be able to have a unit to play center more so. I don't think this is where I don't really think you put this on Immortals or Warriors, because you have access to the Chronomancer, and being able to move and shoot is big. Yes, the Plasmancer can give you the 5-up crits, and that's going to have to be kind of a debate that you have for yourself. Which is more important, shoot and move or the 5-up crits? Me, personally, I'm a big fan of the move and shoot, but I do like the critical hits as well. In my previous list where I did with my Hypercrit, where I was running some Plasmancers and starting it, it's good. It's very good. It's very solid. I play from a more defensive stance with a lot of my armies. So for me, that -1 to hit and the shoot and move is a more appealing trait that I build into over extra critical hits for extra damage purposes. So that's just a personal preference of mine. I do see a lot of points to taking the Plasmancer as well, but personal preference. So I wouldn't necessarily look at the Warriors and stuff for the minus to hit. Actually, Warriors wouldn't be too bad, because the one thing that Warriors are really struggling with right now is that they're super, super fragile. We only get a single dice, a single D3 for reanimation. We do have a Resor possibility for an Overlord or something. And being able to potentially, give them -1 to hit, maybe have a Luminar Xeris floating around nearby for the Armor of a Contempt effect, additional AP. There might be some stuff in there for stacking. And actually, just talking about that with the Luminar Xeris and being able to give +1 AP, being able to, for his ability, being able to give, what was it, the -1, the additional wound, that can help too as well with it. So maybe it wouldn't be so bad on Warriors. I think the only place I would think it'd kind of be at a loss would be with Immortals, just because it just doesn't feel like, I don't feel like Immortals really want an Overlord with them. The cost for having the Overlord model with the squad of Immortals have a T5, and it's basically either they're in a situation that whatever's hitting them, they're too durable and they're not going to go down with their T5 and 3-up save, and they're not falling down, or your opponent's just going to absolutely sweep them because, again, they're only 1 wound. So they're either going to get swept or not swept. It's not a middle ground where something like Necron Warriors, where you can play a game against your opponent and go, well, I'm going to do this. Well, I activate this, I do this. And then the Warriors can kind of survive from it. Being OC2 and stuff like that, again, this might be a unit to creep onto center field and take center field. And last, we have Eternal Conqueror. Overlord only, as all the enhancements should be with this Phalanx. Each time a model in the bearer's unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit within range of an objective marker, you can re-roll the hit roll. Okay, so each time a model in the bearer's unit. So this is now we start looking at Tesla again on the Immortals. So this would be a reason to possibly take an Overlord, as I just said there wasn't. This would be a reason to take an Overlord and put him with Immortals, being the fact that they are the unit in the game that gains or in the Necrons, that gains the most from full rerolls to hit, from a unit within range of an objective marker. That being said, you then have the ability, you can go and take the Plasmancer and give them 5s to crit. You can then you then target the unit with your worthy foe, so now you're +1 to wound. So now that lower strength isn't mattering as much. And if by some miraculous intervention you're able to get Illuminator Zeros nearby, now you got AP1 on that Tesla. Now, at the same time, too, you don't necessarily need to be This detachment doesn't catch me as one that's just going to go screaming across the field. This is going to be slow in its momentum. So having some units like that be more in the backfield, and then something pops up and it goes on like center objective. Like we're talking quite a bit about that center objective, because my first envision is that this is probably is an army that can play center well. There are some armies that you look at them and they have units that are able to take the center and hold the center really well. You have some armies that really they're just too fragile and they cannot hold center no matter what they do. Eldar, as strong as they are, they really cannot get units in center to hold the center objective. But they have so many units that can just, if you try to take center, they just absolutely obliterate you. I feel like this is an army that actually could do well to play the center objective, being able to get your army slowly moving and converging all around the middle. And then into the later turns, if your opponent's not able to remove, you're able to then move out and take other objectives to score later in the game, as well as maybe protecting a closer objective near your deployment zone to score additional points. But this is an army that can play on center, cutting the battlefield in half, which is one thing that I personally really like to do, is try to use an army to cut the battlefield in half and not have to get over to my opponent's side. So I can basically take units that they've put in their army to protect the backfield and make them basically worthless. So the last of these enhancements, that really does help to be able to kind of move into that strategy, and it gives a lot to unpack there with it. So now we'll move away from the enhancements. We're going to sum this all up and wrap this all up in one thing. This is, again, very, very simple abilities. You have, okay, I'm going to give this Overlord the ability to go -1 to hit and put him here. This one gives rerolls on objectives, and I'm putting him here. This one is super good in its own right, so we're probably not take Unflinching Will, especially because they can't go on a Catacomb Command barge. If we could go on a barge, we'd be different conversation. And then you got Honorable Combatant for the knockout of CP. Okay, we're going to put that on this unit of Lich Guard here, and that Lich Guard unit's going to move in the middle. And if anyone wants to try and get funny with me, cool, I'll take your command points. But with those, you take those characters, and then you have worthy foes. There's not a surefire you're looking going, oh, okay, so I take all this, I put it all on a squad of Lich Guard, and I have this Lich Guard squad that just takes on the whole world. Or a squad of Immortals that can just blaze through a whole army. There's none of that. It's, once again, simple, simple, simple. Simple pieces that you put in the mix. So with this Phalanx, we're going to be building an army. We're definitely going to be building an army with this, as opposed to combo pieces and stuff like that. This is going to be more on the army sense. Let's move over to the stratagems and see if that pertains true. Because maybe as we go through a stratagem, we go, well, there's the combo. I'm totally wrong. But from what I've read before, I think this is pretty much the area we're in. So all the stratagems are one command point. We have 1, 2, 3 battle tactics. So we have 3 of them that an overlord, you could zero out on an overlord. Okay, let's start with those, because those, I think that'll be important for the general concept of what we can do for free once per turn, versus what we need to spend command points on, and also kind of put into an aspect of Emotech is an overlord, so he would be beneficial for the worthy foes. So where does Emotech fall in here? Where does the Silent King fall in with here? Because those are two kind of big questions I've kind of had with this detachment. This detachment, looking at it from the outside looking in, going, okay, so this is where we'd run Emotech, this is where you run the Silent King, and the more I read it, I'm not 100% sure that we run the Silent King. But let's go deeper. So your time is nigh. I love the name of these stratagems. These stratagems are pretty cool. Your time is nigh. This is an epic deed. Any phase, just after your opponent's warlord is destroyed. Your Necron, you target your Necron warlord. So you have to kill theirs, but yours still has to be alive. Until the end of the battle, each time an enemy unit takes a battle shock or leadership test, subtract 1 from that result. If you got command points when it happens, I don't necessarily think this is where you're going to want to spend them. That's cool. That's a cool effect. I would like it a lot more if it was something that could. I would like it a lot more if it was a battle tactic that we could go 0 on, so that it's you just like, oh, okay, cool. I killed your warlord. Bam, pop that up. A lot of scenarios, either the warlord's going to die super late, or the warlord dies super early, and you don't have the command points to spend towards it. Cool, cute. If you have the CP, if something's going on and you rolled through your whole turn, you have the command points, you go, okay, cool, I'm going to give you -1 to all your battle shocks for the rest of the game. Okay. Not the most game-breaking strat. Sentinels of Eternity. I know I said I was going to do the free ones first, and unfortunately, I apologize to start reading. So these are the ones that we're spending CP on first. My apologies. Oh boy, we do this during the fight phase. Just after an enemy unit has selected its target. You target a Lich Guard or Triarch Praetorian, so our jumpy dudes. That was selected as the target of one of those attacking units, and this again is in combat. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in the unit is destroyed, if that model has not fought this phase, roll a d6 on a 4-up before removing them from play. The destroyed model may fight after the attacking models in the unit finish making its attack, then remove from play. So, Crypt Thralls, anyone? Early in the edition, we could attach Crypt Thralls to a squad of Lich Guard, and because of the whole units combined and blah, blah, blah of it, the Crypt Thralls were able to give, and I say this loosely because obviously this doesn't exist anymore, so there's no reason to argue about whether they could or couldn't. But the theory was Crypt Thralls attached to Lich Guard could then give the Lich Guard fight on death. That got taken away in tenfold with the ability only targeting the Crypt Thralls, and then now Crypt Thralls can't even join Lich Guard. So that's all gone, so no debate there. But the ability's back. Now you have to take the Phalanx, you have to spend a command point, you get fight on death. Cool little strat, cool little back pocket strat. That's kind of a little bit of a trap. You know, your opponent, someone who is a more combat-focused army like Space Wolves, and just hits you real hard. Well, if you targeted that unit that's going to hit you, because this is a Marine thing to think about here too. This is what a lot of Marine players do. They don't necessarily have a target for the moment. So they'll target something that may come at them. So, and to be defensive for Overwatch and stuff like that. So we have a unit of like TCAV that are about to charge in, and we know they're going to hit our Lich Guard. So we go and target them with +1 to wound. So now when they hit us, we spend the command point 4-up. We get to fight on death. And now with +1 to wound, fight on death, etc. It's a little bit better of a damage punchback. TCAV probably a bad choice of target into that. Depending on how your immortals are loaded out. Lich Guard are loaded out. Like if you have the shield and the sword, you're 1 damage weapon, so it's going to be a lot of hits you're going to need to even take out 1 TCAV. But the +1 to wound definitely would help in getting that damage through. It's just in be able to pick some of those guys up. Being OC1, which we'll talk about in a minute here, being OC1 makes it kind of tough to still be able to hold it. I think the TCAV are at least an OC2 because of their size. So it would still be a rough thing. But at that point, even if you lose that objective to the TCAV, you can hurt them and cause enough of a wound that next turn, when you get your chance to go after them, you might be able to fall back with the Lich Guard and just hit them super hard and remove them from the table, where a lot of armies do struggle with units like TCAVs. And Necrons, in a lot of aspects, we do struggle with TCAV. So this is good to see that we have the fight on death. It's very cool. Very fitting for this heroic Lich-style detachment. So it's a good strat. 1 CP, not bad. And then last of the ones that we have to pay for, since I started down that trend, we have Territorial Obsession. This one got modified. So it's in your command phase, 1 Lich Guard or Triarch unit. Originally, it was just Triarch Praetorian. In the Codex, they errated it. It is Triarch unit. Until the start of next command phase, add 1 to objective control characteristic of models in that unit. And if the unit has a vehicle keyword, add 3 to the objective control value of the characteristic as well. So you do this during your command phase. What's important, so you will telegraph it. What's good about this is because it is your command phase, during your command phase, you can do this at any time during your command phase to have an extra OC value at the end of your command phase. So very, very, very strong strat, especially in the stealing aspect of the game, where we are able to now steal objectives like right out from our opponent's nose, right there. Bam. End of turn. Okay, they think they took it. OC, spend a command point. Bam. My objective. I score the points. And then you move to end of command phase when you actually score your primary and you score that 1. So you can end up stopping something like that TCAP slaughter that we just talked about. So that's it for the ones that we spend CP on. Now, what are the ones that we can do for free? Let's take a look at that. So first off, we'll start with Enslaved Artifice. This is done during your opponent's shooting phase. And you target a Necron unit from your army, excluding Titanic, that has not been selected to fight during your shooting phase, that has not been selected to shoot or fight. Until the end of the phase, each time a hit roll is made, 5-up, score a critical hit. So this is crits 5-up to any Necron unit. This is the only one that is that broad and that wide. Only Titanic that you can't. So the Monolith, the Tesseract Vault are the only things that really you can't do this on outside Forge World. Otherwise, everything else in the entire Necron army can get crit 5-up. So what unit for 1 command point? This is a 0 as well if you use it onto an Overlord unit. So some of the Lich Guard. So now with an Overlord, Lich Guard, I keep saying it, Immortals. With Immortals and Warriors that have things like lethal and stuff like that, crit 5-up plus full rerolls to wound against a unit on an objective marker. Do Warriors suddenly have the ability to really do some damage? Can they do that? Could we? This may be kind of one of those more breakthrough push things where we and I'll sum this up at the end of it all, but this strat for a command point might be what we were looking for with this whole thing. So I'm not gonna, there's not really much to say in there. Crit 5-ups. But on top of it, there's a lot to go into it for what else could end up doing crit 5-ups that we're not even looking at. There's some of the death rays that have D3 sustained to be able to go crit 5-up on it. How strong could that be on something like a Doom Scythe or the Monolith, with those extra weapons? So, oh, nope, can't do the Monolith, not Titanic. But the Doom Scythe, so it's very interesting on that. And also the fact that we're literally talking about basically every other unit in the Necron Codex. So I could just flip to something real quick, and here we go. Annihilation Barge. It has sustained 2 on 6 shots for its twin Tesla destructor that rerolls failed wounds. This is something that has been talked about. You have the Doomsday Arc, or the Doomsday Arc with its Doomsday Cannon, not so much, but the God's Flayers. Then you have the Triarch Stalker. He's got lethal hits on a heavy gauze array. So we could flip through units and units all day in here and see there's a lot of random lethal hits and sustained hits that suddenly this could be really, really powerful for, to be able to give a 5-up to some of the units that traditionally could not get a Cryptek with them. Flayed ones, for example, have sustained hits, so they could, for 1 command point, just start sweeping something. And then, like I said, with the Necron Warriors, we got lethal rapid fire on our gauze. We have lethal on both sides of the fence with gauze. So I personally, the Gauze Reaper having AP1, Xeris nearby giving us AP2. I mean, there's some punch that could potentially be brought out of these things that we weren't seeing before. So good strat. Just going to be a matter of seeing when and where to target it. It's something that can be done for free if it's on with an overlord nearby with the unit. Suffer no rival. You do this during the fight phase. A Lich Guard or Triarch unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase until the end of the phase. Melee weapons have the precision ability. This is such a cool hidden trump card. So you have to do this in melee. It can only be done in melee, but it's in a point where your opponent charges you. And if you have that one command point, they charge you, you have an overlord in the unit, and you go and say, okay, so first I'm going to use this strat, Suffer No Rival, and I'm going to do it for free. So we're going to do it for free because the overlord's there. So 0 CP, boom, I have precision. Then you go and do Sentinels of Eternity, so every time, so your models still have the fight on death effect for 4 up, and then you turn around and they take out the unit, but you take the character out of there. Some units that will really significantly neuter them. A lot of units like, oh, if they're being led by a character, then they're -1 to wound. Oh, it could be a very strong sacrificial play. Cool strat, very good strat. That's definitely a back pocket, especially because it's one that could be played as a 0. Nano Assembly Protocol. Here's shooting phase or fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its target. One Necron's vehicle unit from your army that was selected as the target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Until the end of phase, each time an attack is allocated to a model in your unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. I don't know necessarily how many vehicles we're really going to be looking at running in this. Now, it is a battle tactic, which means that we're not going to be able to zero this one out just because of the fact that we don't have that ability on any vehicles to be joined into a vehicle unit. So the stacking isn't going to, we're not going to get that for 0. And when you look at some of the vehicles, like this is one, like you can run the Triarch Stalker. The Triarch Stalker will gain some of the buffs. It's a Triarch unit, so it gets +1 to wound. It is going to be able to do things like Territorial Obsession for extra, to get a objective control, add 3 to the objective control value of it, which that's going to be really good. That it potentially could steal some objectives. 4 up invuln on that thing. I think the Triarch Stalker has a little bit of a home in here, not completely out of it. OC4 would go to OC7. Reducing the damage by 1 could keep it alive. So I think that's kind of one of those things of like, it's going to be a matter of the situation and the time. I don't see a lot of other vehicles that we really want to run into this. There is one, though, that would be very, very obnoxious with this. It says it targets a Necron vehicle unit. The Silent Cake. Xeric is a vehicle. So spending a command point, now you reduce all damage incoming to him by 1. That could be pretty brutal. A lot of armies do have some high damage weapons that can do some damage efficiently. Xeric has those rocks that protect him initially from some of the bigger hits. And then if your opponent's like, all right, I'm going to shoot some 2 damage in there to try to whittle down how much is going in, and then you pop the strat and now turn all into 1 damage. Well, now, or 2 damage into 1 damage, now it's going to take them significantly longer, and they're going to start to put more shots into Xeric to take that rock down to try to get to a point where the big D6 +2 +1 flat damage weapons that they want to hit Xeric get through to Xeric. And it's going to cost them a lot of resource. And then at the end, they're like, all right, cool, I got that shot. And then you hit it with a 4 of invul and stop it. And it's like you just burnt their entire turn away with that for 1 command point. So I feel like this strat's in there to say to give Zarek the boost. Like where the Hypercrypt has a lot of stuff to really make you want to play a monolith. This detachment does not call it out straight for Zarek, but it does have something like this in there to boost him that this is where you would take the Silent King. So all encompassing, because that's everything. That's a whole detachment. Now, what is going to be some units to look at play? Well, overlords, overlords, overlords. You definitely want to try. I feel like initially the things that go through my head when I'm reading this, like immediately, like it's like, oh, I wonder what this costs. When I go right over to army construction, I immediately look at Necron warriors. I look at Necron warriors. I look at Xeris, and I look at overlords with them and everything, and fully kitting out 220-man bricks. Now, I know that I can't really get the Gauze Reapers into the position that I'd like, so I'd probably start off with Gauze Flayers. They are AP1, but they do have, that'll get them up to AP2 from Xeris, as well as the Armor Contempt effect off Xeris to give these guys that boost, being able to give them -1 to hit off of the Technomancer, so that I can still, and then move and shoot, so I can get these warriors really moving across the table. That I like. I like the way that looks. I feel like that could allow me to play my center strategy as I wanted. Looking at Immortals, definitely looking at Immortals. Both Tesla and Gauze. This is a place where Gauze actually has a interesting home, especially the Gauze on the Immortals next to Xeris again. Like I feel like I see a lot around Xeris with this, because what the Overlords are able to do is they're able to really crank and boost up some of the units like Immortals and Warriors in ways that we don't see in other armies. And then you have the Immortals that are also going to be able to get boosts off Xeris to get to AP2 on their Gauze, a little bit more range, the lethal, the fact of Plasmancer for the 5-up crits, a Strat for a 5-up crits. There's a lot to be unpacked with that. As Lichguard are concerned, Lichguard I'm all over the fence on. Because like at first I was like, okay, well, I'll take a big 10-man brick and that's going to be it. But then I look at it and go, well, what if I take some 5-man bricks? Well, but then I need the Noble with them. Well, and it kind of bounced around. So I feel like this army, I'm going to probably have one of the biggest things, the biggest difficulties, the challenges to building this army is going to be trying to make sure I don't put too many characters in. Not for the sense of assassinate, but for the sense of how many points they're going to cost and spending too many points on characters. Because this definitely leads you to want to run a lot of characters because of different buffs and things. And there is, again, none of this is like standout, like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. This is going to be it. This is so broken. This is so brutal, giving a unit lone op out of Canoptic Court or dropping a unit within 3 inches out of Hypercrypt. There's nothing like that. But there's a lot of little good things. Some other detachments, you look at it, you're like, okay, there's like 1 or 2, like with my Hypercrypt, when it got down to it with my build, I had 1 strat that I was running. That's all I needed for that detachment. Maybe 2 at some times. So with this is one that you look at, it's like, wow, this really literally is, this is fighting an octopus. It's got 8 arms, and wherever you think you can approach it, each one of those arms is holding a different weapon. One's got a hammer, one's got an axe, one's got a gun, one's got the chain to a guillotine waiting there for you. You got all these different facets that it can attack you from. And when you think you have it under control and you pick one direction, if the army is built in such a way, you can almost, very Necron-y, reconfigure your strategy a little bit based on maybe some places you place characters, which I think is going to be a big part of it too, and reconfigure around that. And suddenly, if your opponent thinks they have the hammer, then you coming at them with an axe. So that's going to be a big beneficial. Now, when I said with the characters, we don't necessarily need to super dedicate into these things. Like I could see taking the characters and saying, okay, I have access to this. ability. I have access to Eternal Conquerors for the full rerolls to hit on objectives. Where do I want to go with it this game? You know, do I want to put that with the Lich Guard? Do I want to put that with this Warriors? Do I want to put it with this Mortals? You know, in some scenarios, I may just have the Warrior. I might have Warriors and they may be completely naked and just move them up the field with Xeris and go, okay, I know these guys are not very viable in the situation, but my opponent doesn't have the resources to remove them as quick. So let's just get them near that objective and call it a day. I feel like this detachment is actually one that I really want to run the Convergence of Dominion out of. You know, now being able to take a single Convergence of Dominion, it's very good in the early game when your opponent can't really do anything about it. And things like this detachment where we're running single wound units and you know, the Lich Guard that don't have access to a Feel No Pain. Things like this make me think, maybe running a single Convergence of Dominion would be decent to be able to get a Feel No Pain on things that don't have a typical Feel No Pain. And one of the things I'm looking at right now is the range. I'm pretty sure that is a 6-inch range. So it's going to help during the early points in the game. Let's see. It is a 6-inch range. When a friendly Necron infantry unit is within 6 miles, so it gives 6-inch Feel No Pain to the infantry model, while a friendly Necron's infantry unit is within 6 inches of models in that unit. So it would be the whole unit, so not just the one within 6. Okay, wanted to double check that too, because sometimes that wording can be very critical to say the model within range gets it. So the Convergence, I think, wouldn't be too bad. It's cheap. If what holds true with some of the data slate updates ends up being true, and they can't do actions, it just considerably it just keeps putting the Convergence down. But I mean, this is the intent behind the Convergence, is to just kind of be a beacon right now of Feel No Pain. I think this detachment does well for it. So those are my thoughts. I have still a lot to unpack. This army, like I said, this is going to be an army as opposed to some of the other where it's like, okay, this is my core. Now, what do I want to attach to the core? I don't know the core with this yet, because the core can go many different directions and get very expensive very quickly. Necron Warriors, a 20-man brick, we're looking at 220 points right there. Immortals and Lich Guard are relatively cheap for what they do, so we can slam some of them in there. But, you know, again, with the Lich Guard, I could run 3 5-mans. I could run, I don't want to go like 30 of them, but there's a lot of different options around that. So that is basically it for this. Please let me know in the comment section what you guys think. What are some combos and combinations that you may have had success when running this dynasty? And let's start building a list. All right, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.